Ahoy there, this is oluoyekanmi of nosacapital. I'm bringing you part 2 of What If This Happens. You may recall, for those of you who've actually listened to part 1, you remember that I was reading excerpts from the book The Big Drop by James Rickards. And for those who are not quite sure, James Rickards is the guy who wrote the book Currency Wars and The Road to Ruin. Now, this book, The Big Drop, was written in 2015. So if you haven't listened to the first part, I would suggest you listen to it, because as I said, part 2 is the continuation of the first one. So let's get to it. Now, as I said earlier, the reason I was reading these things back to you is because of the current events, which is to do with the coronavirus, and how many cities across the world have now been shut down, and the lockdown in some places. I mean, for instance, some countries are going to have a complete and utter lockdown. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes on the other side. So anyway, let's get to the next part of what I was about to read to you. This section part is called Shock Doctrine, How We Get from 2015 to 2024. So here we go. One of the most influential books among global power elites in the past 10 years is Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism by Naomikline, published in 2007. The Shock Doctrine is an essential concept for understanding how power elites, such as central bankers, finance ministers, and the ultra-rich, work behind the scenes to advance their agendas. It's also how today's world could quickly turn into the dystopian 2024 I described above. This is not conspiracy mongering or science fiction. This is fact. Shock doctrine is simple. Political leaders use crisis to ramrod policies into place no one would accept in normal times. The shock doctrine begins with the fact that power elites have agendas that take decades or even centuries to implement. These agendas include things like world money, global taxation, control of physical gold, population control, and other plans intended to increase the power and wealth of the few at your expense. Political elites are not fools. They understand that their agenda is highly unpopular. They also understand that democracy empowers everyday citizens and makes their unpopular plans hard to implement. This is where the shock doctrine comes in useful. A shock can take many forms. It can be a financial panic, terror attack, natural disaster, assassination, or other extreme event of a kind that seems to come out of the blue, but is actually somewhat regular and predictable. When the shock occurs, people become fearful and look to their leaders for comfort. People begin to value order above liberty. It is at these critical moments that the elites stand ready with a plan that will restore order, but also secretly advance their agenda. In effect, inevitable shocks are used as a cover to implement plans that you would not accept in ordinary times. Order is restored at the expense of liberty. When the shock wears off, the new order remains, but liberty is lost forever. This is the shock doctrine at work. After each episode, the elites retreat and wait for the next shock, which is always just a matter of time. A good example is the USA Patriot Act passed by the US Congress in 2001. This was the legislative response to the September 11 terrorist attacks. There were a lot of good items in the Patriot Act that aided the global war on terror and helped to eliminate Osama bin Laden. But there's also much that has been abused in the years since. You and I have lost our privacy and have our private communications, emails, phone calls, and other records collected. If you've traveled abroad lately, you may have seen the new kiosks at customs that take a digital retinal scan of each returning traveler. This is something that used to be handled with the paper passport. That retinal scan goes into a digital data bank, perhaps to be used to pursue political enemies, as happened in the recent IRS scandal. Privacy and liberty are almost gone as the result of policy responses to various shocks, such as September 11th. There are many other examples. For investors, the important question is, how will the shock doctrine be used next? What is the unfinished business of the power elites? What is the next part of the hidden agenda to be revealed? And what shock will be used as cover to advance that agenda? These questions have definite answers that we will explore in this book. Regardless of those agendas and coming shocks, there are things investors can do today to avoid being manipulated by the power elites. There are investments such as gold, land and fine art that are not digital and cannot be wiped out by computers. There are wealth preservation strategies that are not subject to current tax. There are portfolio diversification strategies that are robust to many types of shocks, even if, each particular shock cannot be predicted exactly. These strategies should be implemented now before the next shock arrives and options become limited or unavailable. The power elites will continue to play the shock doctrine game, but you do not have to be the victim. The key is to know how the shock doctrine works and prepare now before the next shock strikes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have the introduction as I promised you. And we are undergoing a shock at the moment with this coronavirus. Yours truly speaking, I live in South Africa, but I am in Canada at the moment, and I am stuck in Canada because there were no flights. Air Canada cancelled all the flights, and even if I could get to London, I could not get to South Africa because there were no flights going there. There's an incident at the moment which is kind of getting a bit of political heat in South Africa. South Africa came up with the statement that they were not going to allow any British or American citizens or any foreign citizens into the country. Now, some of these foreign citizens have permanent residence, yours truly included, which means I have every single right except the right to vote. And even I could not get into the country, which is why friends in South Africa had simply told me, you better just sit down in Canada. Now, thank God I have a wonderful host, but I do not know when I'll be going back to South Africa at this rate. But perhaps more importantly, we do not know when this shock, i.e. the coronavirus, when it will be over. It's time for us, many of us, to start paying heed and opening our eyes and paying more attention. Like I said in the first part, whether we like it or not, governments are going to be involved. I'm not here to criticize governments or say governments shouldn't be involved. We can't avoid them. They're going to be involved one way or the other. The question is, what do we do when we come out on the other side of this crisis? How do we proceed? If there's one thing that you would have learned, it's how to prepare for such a crisis. Even if things calm down now and we come out to the other side and things go back to normal, the supply chain goes back to normal, I think this is a time that any of you or all of you will understand that we better prepare for the next one, and this time we better prepared for the future. Only God knows when all this will come to an end. The second thing I was going to say about being prepared is read books like The Big Drop. There will be a link that you can check, and then you can actually buy the book. It's true the book was written in 2015, but never a time has a book been more relevant than now. And I'm sure there are other books. We all need to be vigilant. This is not meant to scare you or come up with any conspiracy theory. This is meant as an intellectual exercise and to make you all think. For me, being stuck on one side of the world and can't get to the other It's been a very serious wake-up call. I intend to be better prepared should anything like this ever happen again. I suggest you all do the same. Anyway, have a good evening. Take care and God bless. Bye.